Well, I've been travelling and living in Africa for years now, and I wanted to put forward the dangerous idea that Africa is not depressing and should not be stamped out, even by celebrities. And what is depressing is the poverty industry, and I think the poverty industry should be stamped out right now by everyone.
Tell me about the poverty industry and specifically the role of Bono and Bob Geldof in perhaps kickstarting it?
Well, I'm a comedy writer, my background's writing. The first time I tried to pitch a story about Africa, they listened like this and it's a great story. Does it have to be in Africa? And I said, well, yeah, it's about a real person, he's in Sudan. They go, oh good, Sudan's in Africa, oh. All right, let me put it another way. Are there going to be a lot of Africans in it? Because there's no getting away from it. Africans are just, in the media, absolutely depressing. I mean, the extent to which this media image is total across the whole 54 countries it's an amazing feat of PR, it really is. And if you look back, it started before Bob Geldof, it started in Biafra when a warlord got himself a publicist and branded the whole civil war as a famine and a genocide, when it really wasn't. It was a civil war, and the charities contributed aid that kept him going, and he admits this, for 3 years or years, however long it was, longer than it needed to have gone on, because it was being whitewashed by the charity industry as something good. And we could all feel great by helping, because everybody's nice. I mean, it's like if I fell in the Sydney Opera House right now, I put it to you that you would jump in and help me, unless you were from Los Angeles, in which case you'd probably just say, God, that's awful. Yeah, but it's to brand a country as depressing is fine if it is depressing, but at the moment it's just completely not true. Europe, America, you name it, we're in the toilet. But Africa has actually got between 5 and 10% growth, which is huge in this economic climate. But we're still branding it as, you know, the only place to go if you want depressing dead babies. And now Bono and Bob Geldof are turning around, they're saying, you know, let's invest, trade not aid. It's like, well, yeah, but it's a mixed message. You can't say, come and build a factory. It's surrounded by dead babies, but, you know, boy, it'll make some cash.
Charities and money of charities have been used to prop up regimes and so on. Why would investment be any different, for example, if it's, you know, furthering the interests of a particular company in a particular state?
We'll put it like this, right? Say you want to set up business in where I live, Nairobi, right? You say, oh my good God, I've just driven my lorry down the road, both the wheels have fallen off and I've been hijacked. Oh bugger, we probably better need a better road. If you build that road where the Chinese are doing it, if I leave for work in the morning, by the time I come back, the Chinese have built a different road. You know, it's a dirty great motorway. Now there's no signs on it yet because it's Nairobi, but at least we're going at 90 miles an hour in both directions. But so that road can be used by anybody. It's infrastructure, which means that all the little ladies who are going to sell fruit and veg in the market can now get there faster, which means you bring the whole country up. And this is the argument for trade, is it brings the country up. Trickle-down economies, you know, that's a different thing. But one thing I do know about charities, what I've seen there, is I mean, they can come in and show me their graphs, but I live there. I do not see it getting better from aid. I really don't. What I see getting better from aid is the lifestyles of people who work in the charity industry. You know, I'm not talking about Mrs. Miggins and her mobile library, although, you know, as I always say, someone should be checking that Mr. Miggins isn't in the back giving us special lessons. But, you know, I'm talking about the vast why does the United Nations? Okay, put it like this. When you fly, long-haul flight, you're quite tired, you don't feel good, you're between a screaming child and the halitosis king. When you are woken up for a lecture about, you know, filling an envelope with change for good for UNICEF, UNICEF staff are nowhere near you. UNICEF staff are flying business at the front. The United Nations, they're drinking the free champagne with the warm nuts. You know, the United Nations sends, it's not, you think, okay, maybe the bosses, they need to fly, it's quite tiring. Interns fly business with the United Nations. They spend $58 million a year on business class travel alone, you know, and for $1 a day, you can help an African child. Well, yeah, I say for $1 a day, send his resume to the United Nations, get him a job. You know, it's an industry, it's about money.
And when Bono and Bob Geldof started this 28 years ago with Live Aid, their argument was that Ethiopia was drought affected, there was famine, something needed to be done. Was there something wrong with that?
I'll say one thing to that, don't mention the war. It's like Ethiopia had a dirty, great war. His famous quote is, I would shake hands with the devil if I could get to the devil's victims. It's like, well, don't give him your car keys. You know, they say that they can't choose. Okay, they say they can't choose between, you know, who deserves aid and who doesn't. And that's the problem. You know, aid is stolen so much by militia that, you know, they no longer use the word stolen, they say it's been diverted. Well, that's fine, but if I went into Harrods Food Hall and diverted a box of truffles, I strongly doubt they'd let me back in there, let alone have a public appeal.
Isn't there a danger, though, that investment will go the same way?
At least you leave the road behind. You know, what do you leave behind with a food drop? Nothing. And what do they think militia are going to do with, you know, a valuable commodity? They're not going to buy themselves a face mask from the body shop. They're going to buy a gun and start again.
How did you come to get involved with, living there, but also writing that book about Joseph Kony? How did that all come about, and how did your views of Africa change after you stayed there and lived there?
Well, obviously I did a 7-year course in poverty at Harvard University, and bollocks. No, I was living in Africa, in Los Angeles rather. I was interviewing Britney Spears and all these people, and then you're part of an awful totalitarian dictatorship that says starving women painted brown are happy, and I just felt like a horrible person. But I'd heard of this place called Africa where you could be good, and I thought, well, if I go there, I can help the children, and people might cop off with me. I was trying to interview, or ideally date, a very attractive person who was going to end this terrible war in which this crazy madman had kidnapped these children and this poor army couldn't possibly stop him. And when I got there, my first problem was that I hadn't told the very attractive man that I had, it was a mess up anyway. So I then get stranded in Uganda, which gave me the time to do a proper investigation of this terrible war. And I found out everything about it was a lie, apart from the fact that this guy has kidnapped thousands and thousands of children. The government that's supposed to be stopping him was making millions, in fact, it's made $2 billion in foreign aid alone to mop up after this guy and for reconstruction. So mysteriously hadn't managed to catch him in 25 years. They'd also sabotaged people who were trying to catch him, like a bunch of priests I always talk about, had gone into the bush to peacefully, without bombing the crap out of anybody, rescue children. Kony's men gave them the kids back, no bullets fired, but when these priests went back to get more kids, and how often can you say that in a positive context, when the priests went back to get more kids, the government army set them on fire and attacked them with rocket-propelled grenades. And this is the kind of story that doesn't get told. So, you know, if I had found love in Africa, perhaps I wouldn't give a crap about any of this.
What did you make of the Kony 2012 campaign?
Well, prior to the Kony 2012 campaign, and I'd met those guys a few times actually, they've been doing it for 9 years. Prior to that campaign, the only people who would take my story about Kony was the travel pages of Britain's Mail on Sunday newspaper. And this is a newspaper so right-wing that, you know, their inaugural headline was "Black people. Whose fault are they?" But I couldn't get it in the press. That's not true, obviously. After Kony 2012, every man and his dog that had even flown over Uganda was being called up for an opinion. It opened the doors to the world's most unlikely story, the world's most untouchable story, and suddenly, like, the doors are open. So who stands up and starts talking? Judean People's Front. It's like, you know, everyone's going, oh, I know that Kony's not in Uganda. Well, great. You know, tell somebody, stop waiting. The door is closing again. Say the door is closing. Just before the door closed, the African Union held a meeting with the Kony 2012 lot and said, actually, we're now going to go ahead. We're going to commit a standing force to go and look for Joseph Kony. And that they told the Kony 2012 this was because of the generation of interest. And the African Union have been talking about that for years. They probably with the United Nations eating their warm nuts, you know. But finally it all came to a head, forced to because of public opinion. You know, yes, I'd rather they hadn't been Christians, if only just with the awful haircuts and the horrible uplifting music. But you know, it's a real media feat to get there.
Finally, are you optimistic about Africa's future? You live there?
Hell yeah. I might have a job in 20 years. I won't do if I live in Europe.